Good morning. It's good to greet you this morning at my kitchen counter and continue to talk about Paul. Paul is in the book of Acts. Of course, Luke is writing it about him and has traveled with him throughout much of what's happened. We're up to the 26th chapter. So where we are is that Paul is before Festus, who is the Roman governor, and also King Agrippa, who is the king in that province. He's more or less a figurehead, but he's Jewish. And so King Agrippa, again, Jewish figurehead in that area, has been left in place by Rome to kind of make sure that he can keep the Jews in line. And then Paul, who is, of course, the missionary for God, speaking before King Agrippa and Festus, the Roman governor. So, one thing that the Bible has plenty of is passion. Paul is so passionate in this passage that I know that I am going to read it not well, but please try to imagine Paul speaking this in front of, again, the king, the governor, every single dignitary who can make it in the room, all in fancy clothing. And he's been in prison for 2 years and standing there in chains. He's already talked about the event on the road to Damascus where he was struck by light and Jesus spoke to him. And so here's where he starts in verse 19. Paul says, "What could I do, King Agrippa? I couldn't just walk away from a vision like that. I became an obedient believer on the spot. I started preaching this life change, this radical turn to God and everything it meant in everyday life right there in Damascus, went on to Jerusalem and the surrounding countryside, and from there to the whole world. It's because of this whole world dimension that the Jews grabbed me in the temple that day and tried to kill me. They want to keep God for themselves. But God has stood by me, just as God promised, and I'm standing here saying what I've been saying to anyone, whether king or child, who will listen. And everything I'm saying is completely in line with the prophets and Moses said would happen. 1, the Messiah must die. 2, raised from the dead. He would be the first rays of God's daylight shining on people far and near, both people who were both godless and God-fearing." That was too much for Festus. He interrupted with a shout, "Paul, you're crazy. You've read too many books, spent too much time staring off into space. Get a grip on yourself. Get back to the real world." But Paul stood his ground. "With all respect, Festus, your honor, I am not crazy. I am both accurate and sane in what I am saying. The king knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure that nothing of what I've said sounds crazy to him. He's known all about it for a long time. You must realize that this wasn't done behind the scenes. You believe in the prophets, don't you, King Agrippa? Don't answer that. I know you believe." But King Agrippa did answer, "Keep this up much longer and you'll make a Christian out of me." Paul, still in chains, said, "That's what I'm praying for, whether now or later. Not only you, but everyone listening today to become like me, except for, of course, this prison jewelry." The king and the governor, along with Beatrice and their advisors, got up and went into the next room to talk over what they'd heard. They quickly agreed in Paul's innocence, saying, There's nothing in this man deserving prison, let alone death." Agrippa told Festus, "We could free him right now if he hadn't requested the hearing before Caesar." So that ends the 26th chapter. And again, this is amazing and sometimes hard for us to comprehend. Paul is living in a world, again with Festus and King Agrippa, of local gods. It's a very tribal culture. And so every group has its gods. It's one of the reasons that Rome, who had conquered much of the known world, was willing to let the Jews just kind of live with their God. Okay, everybody's got a God. You says yours is one that created heaven and earth. Well, most systems have a creation myth. So yeah, their God created the world, your God created the world, whatever. You guys just stay happy within your religious context and don't cause any trouble. And the Jews were always causing trouble. And so here is Paul, again, speaking to every power in that town. Caesarea was a powerful town. It was the local Roman seat in that area, in that province. And he's speaking before the governor and King Agrippa and all their advisors, and saying not only his vision, but that the vision that God had given him is that this God of the Jews was to be the God of all people, people who didn't know him and people who had been raised up knowing him forever, the godless and the God-fearing. And that their faith history, that their prophets had said that this was going to happen. And so Paul says, when King Festus goes, okay, get on the crazy train. I'm not getting on there with you. Because, and one of the things he says is you're reading too many books and looking off onto the sky too much, is that there were philosophers in that time and place who would say similar things to Paul. But as much as, whether Aristotle or, Plato or whomever was writing would have these philosophies, they didn't think that human beings, people around them, were to change their life because of it. And so as these dignitaries, as these people in power, they're saying, Paul, don't believe that everybody's going to get on board, but also, how can you believe that one God, when we have all kinds of gods around us, all kinds of gods for each town and gods for each thing and different gods everywhere, that one God would be the one who was to be the only one worshiped and the only one that we believed in for the transforming life that you're talking about. That was what freaked him out. But King Agrippa understood, and I think, according to the passage, that King Agrippa was kind of in Paul's trance and his passion, and saw what Paul was willing to do for this faith and belief. And so King Agrippa says, if you talk much more, I'm going to become a Christian. So here's Paul at his very best. It would have been an amazing moment to hear him in this speech speak with passion about what God had done in his life, about what he was praying God would do in the world, and what he was trying to respond to in his life as obeying what God wanted to happen in the world. So as he closes up, he says, yep, King Agrippa, I hope that everybody's like me. Not actually in these prison chains, but believing in Jesus Christ, letting this light into their lives, living this transformed life before God. And that was truly what absorbed Paul's life. God always absorbed Paul's life, whether it was as a zealot, as a Pharisee, or as this person transformed by the presence of Christ in his life. And so, as he finishes this understanding of who God is in his life and who God has called him to be, and the mission that he is continuing to share. Hey, Annie. Not only when he was in Damascus, but as he left Jerusalem and then went out into the whole world. And that's pretty literal in terms of Paul's understanding, because he went to all of the towns around him and continued to preach this same message. So when he entered whatever town he entered and whatever belief system those people had, he said, yes, you have that belief system, but here is the God who has created all and offers personal relationship and forgiveness and light in your world. It's one of the reasons the speech in Athens is so profound and really kind of, to me, hooks into this because, you know, in Athens, they even have a statue to the unknown God, just so they cover all their God bases. So Paul says that I know that everybody has different gods that they're following. That's the way our world is. And actually, that's the way our world is. And that as everybody has claimed all of these different gods, that it is the one true God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God who was raised Jesus from the dead. That's the one who has the power to grant us relationship, grant us forgiveness, grant us light. And so Paul does this very convincing sermon to explain to Festus and King Agrippa what got him into trouble. And he says what got him into trouble is opening what had been a tribal religion of Judaism to the whole world, and to saying that their God, who, again, they believed was a very, Jewish folks believed that he was the powerful God and the one God, but he was their God, was desiring relationship with everyone. And that's what got him in trouble, which in fact it was, and got close to getting him killed a number of times. So as Festus and King Agrippa go into the anteroom to discuss what's going to become of Paul, they understand quite clearly that what Paul is being accused of and his life is being threatened because of is a religious matter. It is not a political matter. It is not anything that Rome would ever get involved in. But remember, Felix, the previous governor, was kind of waiting for a bribe, according to the book of Acts. And so he had held on to Paul because he really didn't care. He thought maybe if he held on to him long enough that somebody would pony up the money and give him a good bribe, and he'd be happy to release him. I don't think Felix saw anything in Paul that was a political problem, and I think he understood it to be a religious problem, but, you know, Felix was just looking for a kickback. So here's Festus, who's an honest man. We know that not only from the way he's behaving here, but from other materials of the time. And King Agrippa, who is Jewish and certainly understands the Jewish proclamations about Messiah and understands, of course, they've heard about Jesus of Nazareth and believe that he was the Messiah. So both of them say, yep, there's no reason that this man should be arrested. There's no reason he could be convicted of anything. There's no reason that he should be killed, but he, as a Roman citizen, has requested a hearing before Caesar. And so that's what we got to do. So we do what we got to do. And he is continuing to say that, that Paul will continue in the path that he has started. He will go to Rome. And Paul becomes very excited and is very excited about going to Rome, which is the ultimate seat of power. Good morning, Carolyn. So that's me for today. It's a great passage. It is amazing who Paul was, the power and the passion that he had to transform so many lives in his day and in his time, and to, in complete trust of God, continue to follow a path that led him not only to prison for a number of years, but to Rome. Thank you, guys. My phone's given up. Bye. Good to see you.